Following is the story of a transgender man who is all of a sudden questioning the origin of his trans identity after his mum revealed a horrific secret to him while on her deathbed. This person only felt comfortable opening up to detransitioners for help and not other transgender people. The audio for this video has been provided by Catman. We are on good terms again, and he offered to help me with this series so that I can cover more stories in cost-effective way. I know many people want me to use my real voice as much as possible, but I hate my voice after it has been ruined by surgeries. However, Catman might be able to grant you this wish using his skills in the near future. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Not a troll. I'm really looking for honest advice, but made an account to keep this separate from my main one. I am a trans man who transitioned when I was 16. I've been on testosterone for 13 years, and I have had mastectomy, vaginectomy, hysterectomy, vaginectomy, and phalloplasty procedures. I have yet to ever feel any sense of regret and have really felt at peace with myself for the last few years. I have always felt fortunate not to struggle with doubt and for my feelings to be consistent, which I know is not the case for all trans people. It is what has always made me so confident to go ahead with surgeries. Being unhappy with my genitals is one of my earliest memories. I couldn't have been more than about 2 at the time. It always made me assume it was just some kind of issue with how my brain developed. But I have just had a complete bombshell dropped on my life, which has made me question everything. My mom is terminally ill and said she had to tell me something. When I was 12 months old, she was in hospital for a few weeks, so I had to be looked after by a family member when my dad was at work. One day, he came to pick me up, but I was crying hysterically, and he could not calm me down. Once we got home, he went to change me and found I was bleeding and had injuries. He took me to hospital where they examined me, which showed I had been raped. Ultimately, my parents decided it would be better not to tell me anything when I was older. So I've gone my whole life without being aware, as I don't have any memories from that age. But now I can only wonder if that is the reason I developed an aversion to my privates. If that is the case, then does that mean everything I have done is just escaping something that I couldn't even remember? I honestly don't know what to do with this information and wish she had never told me. The years since I finished my final procedure have been the happiest of my life, but now it all feels tarnished. My wife is pregnant with our first child, obviously not biologically mine, but that has no impact for me. So I just can't dump something like that on her right now. I hope this isn't the wrong place to post, but to be honest, I worried about posting in one of the trans forums. I know people get very offended when it's linked to something like abuse. I'm sure I would be better off just forgetting about it all. It's not like things can be changed at this point. But no matter how much I try, it's the only thing on my mind, and it makes me feel panicked and sick to my stomach. I don't know if I can ever get back to the peace I had before. And if that is the case, then I don't know how I can keep moving forward with my life. I figured people here are the most likely to understand and maybe can give me advice, even though I'm not a detransitioner.
Here are some of the responses to the post. The link to the original post will be pinned in the comment section down below.
It's going to be hard incorporating that memory into your life story, but you know what? If you're happy with your life, as is, just keep looking forward. Every action that happens in our life shapes who we will be in the future, both good and bad. And it kind of sucks when you got told, as you would also be dealing with what your mom was going through. Just remember, your mom was troubled with this stuff all your life and felt she had to tell you to cleanse her soul before moving on. Hope you work it out and be happy in your life.
Unfortunately, Catman's software is not perfect yet, so it gave us different voices for the OP's responses and grouped them all at the end. This issue will get fixed in the future. I had to do a lot of post-production editing to try to make things flow better. We did the best we could.
I'm trying not to feel angry with her and my dad about it, especially as there isn't that much time left with her. But deep down, all I feel is rage. I know that isn't fair, but it's visceral. I can't understand why she would lie to me my whole life, even when she could see all the issues and unhappiness I had in the past. I'm trying to try and just keep moving forward and be excited about the baby, but I'm really struggling to focus on anything else right now. I'm trying to seem normal for my wife, but she knows me well and I can sense she knows something is up. Sorry, I'm just rambling at this point, not even sure what point I was trying to make, but thank you and I appreciate your support.
Being unhappy with my genitals is one of my earliest memories. I couldn't have been more than about 2 at the time. It always made me assume it was just some kind of issue with how my brain developed. Children shouldn't have any real concept of genitals, what they mean, what they do, or how they pertain to sex and gender.
Genitals to a child really should only be thought of as, yes, I pee out of this.
Children don't naturally figure out or understand how genitals function in a sexual context on their own without any external interference. Knowing that boys have willies and girls don't is realies and girls don't is realistically the extent of a child's understanding of the private parts. As a child, I had literally no concept of genitals or what they meant outside of peeing. Therefore, I had no dysphoria. I started transition the same age as you, 16. My dysphoria came about once I was made aware of and understood the sexual nature of genitals, which for me was around 12-15, which was also the time in which I was subject to grooming by older men, which resulted in me being disgusted by men and by extension, male anatomy. If that is the case, then does that mean everything I have done is just escaping something that I couldn't even remember? None of us can say for sure whether you transitioned due to abuse, but what we can say is that it seems to be awfully common amongst trans to trans people to have suffered or experienced sexual trauma. The years since I finished my final procedure have been the happiest of my life, but now it all feels tarnished. My wife is pregnant with our first child. Obviously not biologically mine, but that has no impact for me. So I just can't dump something like that on her right now. I don't know if I can ever get back to the peace I had before, and if that is the case, then I don't know how I can keep moving forward with my life. You don't need to dump anything on anyone. But what I would suggest is talking through all of this with a good psychiatric doctor, not a trans. First, doctor, but a doctor who isn't a slave to social gender politics and preferably well-versed in trauma therapy. I hope this isn't the wrong place to post, but to be honest, I worried about posting in one of the trans forums. I know people get very offended when it's linked to something like abuse. It's because they're afraid it might be true, and thus forces them to reflect and understand themselves. People find it much more comfortable to say, I have gender dysphoria, and then proceed to transition as a fix. All. Rather than to decode all of their complex feelings that may have led them to feel this way in the first place. There's also a subset of trans women, in particular, who transition for very overt sexual reasons, and they tend to respond to any insinuation of trauma causing dysphoria with outright venom. Steer well clear would be my advice. I'm sure I would be better off just forgetting about it all. It's not like things can be changed at this point, but no matter how much I try, it's the only thing on my mind, and it makes me feel panicked and sick to my stomach. This is how I felt when it first hit me too. What I ended up doing was allowing myself to slowly accept and acknowledge things over the course of several years, rather than accepting it all at once and feeling all of the emotions at once. It first started about a year after my sears, as the space my genital dysphoria once took up in my brain was now vacant, and I was able to think on a deeper level without the immediate must get rid of these disgusting genitals thoughts popping up. Very annoying that it had to happen in that order, but it is what it is. Over the next few years, I underwent a full mental detransition in which all of the ideology and bullshit that allowed me to believe the born in the wrong body theory completely left me. I experienced grief and mourning over the notion that I chopped up a body that didn't actually need to be chopped up had I have been offered proper trauma therapy instead. But all of this was a relatively gradual process, and so it didn't dominate my life or my thoughts 24/7. It just hit me in waves, which made it much easier to process for me. Bottom line is, talk it all through with a reputable professional, and please don't feel like you shouldn't post here. The sub is here to help.
To be honest, it was never about genitals in terms of sex. It's hard to say. If I had a bath, I would look at myself and feel shock and disgust, and then look at my brother and think that is how I should be. As I got older, obviously sexuality develops, but I couldn't stand the thought of being touched somewhere that I hated and felt so uncomfortable with, so I never took it anywhere until after I had surgery. I'm sorry to hear about your grooming abuse by older men, how that impacted on you. I have thought about seeing someone, but at this point, I don't even know where to start. It feels so invasive for someone to know what was done to me, and it's easier here because it's anonymous and no one can see who I am. But the thought of sitting in front of someone and saying the same and kind of same and having them think of me in that situation is too much. I am aware of the subset of trans women you are talking about, and to be honest, I have very little to do with trans spaces as there is a lot of toxicity. I was a part of a few groups that were practical in terms of discussing how to go about things or for specific surgery, but that's the extent of it, really. I appreciate you letting me know I'm welcome to post here. I was worried it might come across wrong as I'm not detransitioning. I picked questioning own transgender statuses because that was the closest, but in truth, I don't know how I feel or what I want right now.
So many trans-identifying females have experienced sexual-related trauma that has made them repulsed by their own bodies. Many of the detransitioners in this sub, in fact, it's not outside of the realms of possibility that your transition is the subconscious result of your trauma. Abuse has the power to imprint, especially on infants. Because their frontal lobes are developing, they rely heavily on routines and experiences to shape their understanding of the world. And if you introduce abuse and disrupt it, it can almost definitely have lasting consequences. By the time you are 12 months, you may have bumped your head, scraped a knee, or have fallen on your butt, and those experiences help to develop your sense of danger and spatial limits. But straight up being, physically speaking, that tends to take a long and painful while for a fully grown adult to heal from. As an infant, I imagine it was probably the largest amount of pain you ever endured, likely to the point where you immediately learned to see your body with dislike as a primal instinct as a result of the physical pain you learned it could experience.
It is very possible you transitioned due to the abuse you faced as a child. The body does keep score, and there's a book by a similar name that I would recommend for reading in regards to trauma and abuse. I suppose it's time to be a bit controversial here, because I know that there's some people here who will immediately jump to telling every questioner that they should detransition. I disagree. You should only test the idea if you feel you genuinely need to. I don't believe in any concepts like true trans and born trans, and especially since you were a victim of sexual abuse, that is not the case anyways. But what I am seeing from you is that you stated you've practically finished your surgical goals. You've been satisfied with your transition and you haven't experienced any regret. Could that change? Sure. In short, you weren't experiencing any kind of distress towards your transition and life until this bombshell that challenged your reason came. I believe a trans YouTuber, a controversial one, albeit Blair White, stated she had transitioned due to trauma, but she's still a trans woman and her transition has made her life better. Though I know this is a thin line to cross, I do not inherently believe transition is always a bad thing, and that there are individuals like yourself and Blair who seem to have benefited. The difference between you, though, is it seems Blair might have come to terms with her trauma, recognizes she is a biological male who wishes to be treated and seen as a woman. That, despite everything, she doesn't wish to ruin what she's got with an experiment that may not even be worth it. I'll stop rambling. You probably should look into your childhood trauma and try to come to peace with what happened. Evaluate your transition again, and if you feel that now you feel as if you aren't authentic as a trans man, ask yourself why that is. You need to first and foremost come to the terms with the fact of why you really transitioned, your aversion to your born genitalia, and further disgust for your body prior. And ask yourself if you think you can continue living as a trans man, knowing all that, coming to terms with all that. If the answer to that is no, if you feel like you're just living a lie now, then it might be worth re-evaluating your whole transition status rather than the transition itself for your future's sake, especially since you're soon to be a parent of sort. You're in a tough position right now, though, given your partner.
Thank you. This is quite reassuring. To be honest, I've never really subscribed to the notion that one can actually change their sex. Transition always just seemed to me a means to relieve the misery. At the end of the day, I'm still female now, but my body more resembles that of a man. It's artificial, not a true changing of sex, but that was something I'd made my peace with over the years. All the same, I can't deny it was a lot easier when I could just think of it all as some kind of developmental abnormality. I was happy until all this came out, but it took such a long time to get there. And now I can't help but think, what if I knew and did something different? Where would I be now? But I suppose it's not helpful to think that way, because what things are as they are. I don't really feel all that differently about my body, but I do feel like maybe I've been stupid and naive and just bought into something when actually it can all be explained by what happened to me as a baby.
Personally, I think transitioning is a bad idea for anyone. However, there seems to be some trans people who have benefited from it in some way. There are some detrans people who did so after SARS, but it seems really tough, from the accounts I've heard. And all of those people detransitioned because they had regret, or wanted to be seen as their birth sex again, etc. There was a tangible reason. If you're not experiencing regret or medical issues at the moment, I don't think it's necessary to detransition, especially given your situation. You can always detrans if you really want to, but I don't think detransition is necessary to come to peace with your sex and any trauma that led to the transition in the first place. Like the commenter below said, Blair White knows she transitioned at least partially because of trauma. But because she knows she is male and doesn't attempt to be something, she's not a woman in the capacity that a biofemale is a woman, she seems to have found peace. I believe this is possible for you too.
I don't think I want to, but I'm not sure what I should do. It's more just that everything about my life and how I see myself seems like it's based on a lie now. I've always known I'm not actually a male, but having a body that looks more like that, even if it's artificial, made me so much happier. If it is not only artificial biologically, but there isn't a single tangible thing about it, then I don't know where that leaves me.
My heart goes out to you. I can only speak for myself, but I was 35, had been happily FDM living stealth for easily 13 years, when I was processing childhood memories and realized that Sase was part of my story too. I know for myself that I was sexualized before I even hit puberty by adult men on the street waiting around for day labor in my neighborhood, by guys on the bus, by guys in cars, chilling the gut was a puberty. I never felt safe. I was raped at 15 by an adult male in my sleep. When I woke up, I was completely frozen. My failure to fight yell scream prevented me from seeing it as a rape until 30 years later, in therapy. This assault by itself did not cause my gender dysphoria. It was with me from early childhood. But I do think we live in a society that preferences men and boys and denigrates women and girls. Everything taken together, it would seem rational that I would want to hide my body. I have absolved myself of this, and then I place it in the proper perspective. I hope you find a good trauma therapist. I highly recommend somatic therapy because emotional physical trauma does get locked in the body and you can't think or process your way out of it with brain power alone. I'm sending you healing thoughts for your greatest good. Parenting is amazing. Don't let this discovery rob your joy at this pivotal time in your life.
Thank you so much. It's good to know it's not just me, but at the same time, I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. I've always known a lot of detrans people have faced abuse in their childhood, and it always felt like I was one of the fortunate people that didn't. It feels a bit like I don't know who I am. Now I know that isn't the case. I am trying to turn my attention to being a parent. It wasn't something I ever thought would be a part of my life, which makes it feel even more special. I also really don't want to let my wife down by having some kind of self-focused crisis when she needs me the most. I hope the therapy has helped you and you're happier since the transition.
In your life.
Oh gosh. I'm so sorry you went through that. I don't have any specific advice for you, but I can recommend you a book. The Body Keeps the Scores by Bessel van der Kolk. It is about the way the body reacts to trauma and how it stores the memory of it even when you suppress it. It's really good, and I heard a lot of survivors have felt it helped them work through their traumas. Wishing you the best of luck on your healing journey.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. A few people here have mentioned that book, so I've ordered it so I can read it. Well, from my own experience, Ninja, I was also surgically altered, so I can tell you it's never too late to think about everything. It's okay to re-question things. It's even more than okay to stay how you are now. The whole thing is just about finding true peace and happiness, to understand what happened, why you felt the way you did, and have real peace and come to terms with it. Peace is letting all of your burdens go, that it doesn't really matter we look like or what others might think. We are all just the sum of our parts, with or all just the sum of our parts, with or without parts. It doesn't make us us. Everyone is beautiful in their own way. I believe understanding what brought you down the road you are on is part of finding peace, that the parts you have don't matter, it's what's inside. That's where the healing starts and ends.
It certainly plays a role. It may not be the entire reason why, but it is a removable reason for you. Trans people rarely don't have trauma motivating their dysphoria.
I think to understand why, you have to figure out why you wanted that change. What was really the driving force? Aside from not feeling like you weren't your gender assigned at birth, why did you feel the need to change who you were? I mean, the root cause. I understand not feeling comfortable in your own skin after a traumatic incident like rape, and how you said you remember from such a young age not liking your genitalia. What was home life like? Did anything else happen there? Were either parents out of the picture? So I'm not a psychiatrist or qualified to give psychological advice, but would it be okay for me to assume because of the trauma and sexual abuse as a child, it affected you even though you didn't remember it? It's quite common in abuse cases that the victims may have mentally blocked these things out. Not on purpose, it just happens. So as you got older without realizing what happened to you as a child, until only recently you started changing yourself to ease that pain that you feel, without knowing why. That discomfort and identity issue is there. I believe that is what has happened. It was like being someone else, so you didn't have to live with that feeling of abuse as if it happened to someone else. Separating the two people, you from before and you now. I'm sorry to hear about your mom being terminal. That is very sad, and I'm sorry about the trauma you suffered as a child. I hope you can find peace whether you stay as you are now, or be who you once were again. I think to really start to heal from what happened you should speak to a psychiatrist, and go over your life with them to really get to the bottom of it, and then decide from there where you stand on your identity. Again, wish you all the best. Take care.
You're right in that I've never really known why. All I've ever known is feeling a hatred and sense of horror about first my genitals, and then in my teen years, my breasts as well. But I didn't know where that came from. I've never really understood the gender identity argument because I don't feel like a man or a woman or anything. I just feel like I wanted the misery to go away and to feel normal and okay my body. Since I had phalloplasty, last procedure, that is how I felt, and it seemed like my life had started properly. But now I don't know what to think, and maybe I've just done it all because of what happened. My home life was not brilliant, but not awful. Pretty standard, I would have thought. Didn't get on with my dad and not seen him since I was a teenager, but always got on well with my mom and my siblings. I can only assume what happened did affect me, even though I don't remember it happening because I was too young. That's what I'm left wondering, really. If that is the cause of everything that has troubled me in my life, and if it is then, where does that leave me now? It took a long time to accept that I could never have what I desperately wanted, but I'd managed to find a peace of sorts in accepting that the best I could have was a life as a trans man. Finding my wife and starting a family in our own way has especially been a source of joy in not focusing on the negatives. Not perfect, but what I wanted wasn't an option, so torturing myself over what could have been was never going to do any good. But it is hard to have the same peace when everything I thought was true might not be, and it all could have been for nothing. Sorry, I've just realized I'm being very negative and not responding properly to proactive ways to cope, but I think I just needed somewhere to get it all out, and I appreciate people being willing to listen. I know it's not the same as a professional, but I've been mulling over it for weeks and felt ready to explode, to be honest. Thank you for your time and support. I really do appreciate it.
When I first was seeking answers, I was looking for an explanation of my severe pain and health issues that were only getting worse. This hit a crisis point at ages 13, 14. My health issues were routinely denied and associated with being female. That was called normal. I had to fight like a dog to get help. The only answer I found on my own was transgenderism, since I'd felt consistently like a boy since my earliest memories. Now that I have detransitioned, I no longer have an explanation for those health issues. I recognized that they'd been ignored the entire time, even once I finally got approved for testosterone. Adults had done nothing but deny me every step of the way. I also survived severe abuse and PSD, which I think was caused by both the abuse and my health issues, including transgenderism itself. There are likely a lot of people like me and you whose health issues go undiagnosed and invisible, leaving us with only transgenderism to identify. I suggest you write about what you're going through. Describe what you feel, describe as many observations as possible and how those observations affect you. You could write separately about your transition in current life, how you really experience it.
And then write about the traumatic experience you have no memory of and all the ways you could react to it, how it's affecting you. Then you might get to deeper questions and identify what exactly you're questioning.
Identify what you are uncertain about. After some time working on this yourself, you might want to talk to your wife and even seek therapy over this. It is true, the body keeps the score. The mind might not remember, but the body carries trauma. A trauma-specific therapy called Somatic experiencing helped me the most. It is powerful, deeply physical, and seeks whole. Body healing.
I actually had a lot of pain in that part of my body my whole life. Really, up until it was removed and that had healed. I just assumed that was how things were for everyone. I know it sounds stupid, but it didn't even occur to me until I read your comment that it could be linked to what happened or the surgery they did to repair it, etc. I never went to a doctor about it because, like I said, I thought it was normal, and also, I always dreaded ever having to expose those parts of myself to anyone. I'm so sorry your health issues were ignored. I think it's a massive issue with certain groups like women and young people that they just roll their eyes and assume someone is a hypochondriac. I'm sorry also to hear about your abuse. It seems like almost everyone here has that kind of background, which is quite shocking. I will try writing because you're right that I'm not sure what I actually think right now. It's more just a visceral feeling of unease and constant anxiety, but the details I can't put my finger on. I have thought about talking to my wife, but I'm not sure if they would be a right time. Even after the birth, she will be physically recovering and we will both be sleep deprived for a while. I'm not sure if I can even say it out loud either. But maybe if I write things out it will help.
That's so terrifying to find out after all those years. I would be shocked, angry, and confused. Really sorry you're having to grapple with this new curveball decades later. Science is still lagging in understanding infant cognition and development of identity personality, which usually forms by age 5-6. I have been dysphoric since a very young age, but was never abused that I know of. Perhaps your hatred toward the body part began before you could even find words to express yourself. Instead, associating it with pain, fear, trauma, and revulsion. Did you feel those things from a young age? I don't know what to tell you other than to keep your head up, get therapy, and do what's best for you. You already changed your body, so it'd be hard to detransition anyway. And it sounds like you were okay with your body before this revelation. Most of us here believe it's important to be honest about sex, since sex is important for safeguarding. So if anything, we probably would say you were always female, still are. But it's your choice to modify your appearance to mimic a man's. Regardless, you did what you thought was best for you based on the information you had. Do you believe you would have processed everything differently and not transitioned had you known the potential source or factor of your dysphoria?
Just a reminder, this video simply voices over the Reddit post and some of the responses and is not meant to be used as medical advice. If you believe you have been harmed by medical transition or want to help those who have been harmed, you can check out some links in the description of this channel. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please, don't forget to subscribe, share, and like to raise awareness and to help me out.